anniversary. I never really considered I would be thinking about when I started in the 90s. So much has changed, but certainly knowing that we have been able to continue to celebrate this work and be, I think, a model for other OPOs and certainly communities. And so that speaks to the staff and the strength that we have in our team. And I'm just proud to be a part of that.
In 1973, 3 hospitals got together, St. Luke's, KU, and Research. The ones who were potentially going to be doing transplants, and decided we needed some form of organ retrieval system. This was in the really early days, and we wanted to make sure this was a community resource, not a hospital-based system, and that's what we did.
I think from my perspective, MTN was always a very professional organization, although in its initial phase in 1972, it was a community-based kidney transplant program and laboratory. And I was recruited in 1989 to come to MTN and lead a effort to modernize or really professionalize MTN to be a more service-oriented organization. Prior to that, we certainly were service-oriented, but it was more reactive. That we'd wait for the hospitals to call us and we'd send staff. After I arrived, we really looked at hiring professional nurses to be our liaisons to respond to the donors in the hospitals and provide a positive service to the staff in the hospital to be able to expedite the process of donation. And also it was changing during the 80s and 90s in this country with transplants being more successful that were non-renal as well, hearts and lungs and livers. So we really were leading the charge to try and change the organization to be able to respond to that reality and provide organs not only to our local transplant centers, but also to transplant centers throughout the country.
I think you have to stand back and just say, wow, this organization has always been high performing. I had the chance on the board to serve as president of the board for 2 sequential 2-year terms in the early 2000s, and then again a couple years ago. My first tenure, we were a super organization looking to do better, and lo and behold, the HRSA collaborative came out and MTN went nuts. They did such a wonderful job. Transplant numbers, donor numbers doubled, and I think that was a real test of the MTN's ability to rise to the occasion. They'd always been good, but going from good to great takes a special organization. And I sat back and with Jan talked about where can we take the organization. And I thought we really needed to think about a donor care unit and a donor recovery center. And I was able to convince the board along with Jan. And although we were skeptical and a little concerned about financials, here we sit today with a beautiful facility that all of us in leadership had a role in developing, not just embracing, but helping to design. And it is, again, the #1 OPO in the country for a bunch of reasons. And having been on both ends of the equation, the donor and the recipient, while we always value the future of the recipient, nothing happens without the donor and the donor families. And that relationship exists nowhere else in medicine. And the day I don't have a tear thinking about transplant and the importance of donors, that's when my career ends.
As far as looking at MTN's history, though, and looking back on it and thinking of those successes, I look forward to where MTN is going and think, well, what advice could I give? Having been retired now for 6 years, I come to MTN and I look around and say, MTN's still doing it. MTN has done so much in the last 6 years with bringing the ICU capability and the operating room capability to this facility to better serve donor families and donors and to better meet the needs of the transplant centers and the changing healthcare environment that we're in, and the hospitals that would otherwise have to dedicate a lot of resources to organ donation and tissue donation when it couldn't all be centralized and accomplished in one place. So I see the future in the present, because I'm looking at the future that I wasn't here when I retired, and it's inspiring, and it makes me extremely happy to see that MTN it continues to excel and continues to innovate and do things that we could only dream of in years past. The most important thing about MTN is the people. You know, our people are what makes MTN MTN. They're the compassion, the excellence, the professionalism, the knowledge behind all that we do, and really they're an invaluable resource.
No matter what your position is, from the person answering the door, answering the phone, to the person that is paying the bills, each and every one of us get to make a difference in somebody's life every single day. And that's something that I can take home every day, that today I made a difference in at least one person's life because of what we do here.
You know, our mission-focused work is the most important thing that we do. And I got this really from Larry Kist, our founding executive director. And he said, you know, the very lives of those that we are working for are dependent on us. They depend on us to do our very best work. And so for me, it's always thinking about who we're helping. We're helping the donor families. We're being a beacon of hope for them as they think about their legacy and for their loved one, but also the recipients, and knowing that we are doing our very best.